Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and very welcome to Nobel Forum this morning for the announcement of this year's Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. I will first read the announcement in Swedish, followed by English, and after that we will have some time for presentation of some background and of course to open up for questions. So I'll start in Swedish. Nobelförsamlingen vid Karolinska institutet har idag beslutat att Nobelpriset i fysiologi eller medicin år 2019 skall delas lika mellan William Kaelin, Sir Peter Ratcliffe och Greg Semenza för deras upptäckter av hur celler känner av och anpassar sig efter syretillgång. Så det var svenska. I will turn to English. The Nobel Assembly at Karolinska Institutet has today decided to award the 2019 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine jointly to William Kaelin, Sir Peter Ratcliffe, and Greg Semenza for their discoveries of how cells sense and adapt to oxygen availability. Here we have the three happy laureates. To the left, Greg Semenza. He was born in 1956 in New York. He performed his prize-winning studies at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, where he's still active. In the middle, Sir Peter Ratcliffe was born in 1954 in Lancashire in the UK. He performed his prize-winning studies at Oxford University, and he's continuing to do his research at Oxford University, and he's also at the Francis Crick Institute in London. And to the right, William Kaelin, born in 1957 in New York. He performed his prize-winning studies at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, where he's still active in his own lab. I will now turn to Professor Randall Johnson, a member of the Nobel Assembly, who will describe some detail and background behind the work. So please, Randall.
This year's Nobel Prize is awarded for determining how oxygen levels are sensed by cells. Oxygen is essential for life and is used by virtually all animal cells in order to convert food to usable energy. However, the amount of oxygen available to cells, tissues, and animals themselves can vary greatly. This prize is for three physician scientists who found the molecular switch that regulates how our cells adapt when oxygen levels drop. The most fundamental use of oxygen by the cell is to convert food to usable energy. Just as a candle needs the right amount of oxygen to burn cleanly, cells need to adjust their metabolic rates based on how much oxygen they have available to them. This allows each cell, and indeed our bodies, to efficiently and safely burn fuel so as to create heat, do work, and build new tissues. Cells and tissues are constantly experiencing changes in oxygen availability. As an embryo grows and develops, as muscles work, the oxygen available changes as the tissues themselves change. Cells need a way to adjust to the amount of oxygen they have while still doing their important jobs. Sometimes, oxygen levels change across the entire body, such as when we go to high altitudes, and sometimes they change in very small parts of our bodies, such as when we get a wound that interrupts the local blood supply. This triggers an adaptive process called the hypoxic response, which in turn can induce processes in the body as diverse as new blood vessel formation, or angiogenesis, new red blood cell formation, or erythropoiesis, and metabolic adaptations of cells, including glycolysis. One of the first physiological changes caused by low oxygen noted by scientists was the erythropoietic response. This occurs when the body is at high altitude or when it experiences anemia, such as an insufficient number of red blood cells. This hypoxia, or low oxygen state, induces expression of a hormone by the kidney, the erythropoietin hormone, also known as EPO. It became clear to researchers in the field that EPO gene expression goes up when oxygen levels go down. This allowed scientists to use the EPO gene as a tool to analyze the role of oxygen in the control of gene expression. Now we turn to the work that gave rise to this year's Nobel Prize. The earliest work by one of this year's laureates, Greg Semenza, showed that this increase in EPO was due to a specific region of the EPO gene that he defined and called the hypoxia response element, or HRE. Semenza used this oxygen-regulated segment of the gene to isolate a transcription factor protein complex. He called this protein complex HIF, for hypoxia-inducible transcription factor. HIF itself is formed of two proteins, one called ARNT, or ARNT, that is always present, and one he called HIF-1 alpha. The HIF-1 alpha protein is oxygen sensitive, which is to say that it is present when oxygen is low and disappears when oxygen levels are high. Semenza and others showed that HIF was present in almost all cells, and at this point HIF was potentially a key regulator of oxygen responsiveness. Further work by a number of groups showed that HIF was constantly made by cells, but in high oxygen conditions, which we call normoxia, it was constantly destroyed by proteasomal degradation. At the time of the cloning of HIF by Semenza in 1995, William Kaelin was studying a gene involved in cancer called the von Hippel-Lindau gene, or VHL. His group, in collaboration with others, showed that cells lacking VHL had increased expression of hypoxia-inducible genes. Subsequently, Sir Peter Ratcliffe's group showed that VHL was necessary for HIF to be destroyed by the proteasome. This indicated that a key role for the VHL gene was to direct HIF to be destroyed under high oxygen conditions. However, we still didn't know how oxygen regulated this switch. Ratcliffe and Kaelin then simultaneously showed the way by demonstrating that an oxygen-dependent reaction seals HIF's fate in high oxygen conditions. When enough oxygen is around, two prolines in the HIF-1 alpha protein are hydroxylated. Hydroxylated HIF is then recognized by the VHL complex, which then targets HIF for destruction. To sum up, then, this elegant switch, which was elucidated by the work of this year's laureates, under low oxygen conditions, HIF is made, it accumulates in the nucleus, and that results in the induction of a wide variety of oxygen-sensitive genes. But when oxygen is present, HIF is hydroxylated, recognized by VHL, and destroyed. There are at least 300 genes with hypoxia response elements, or HREs, in the human genome. These are all regulated by HIF to help cells, tissues, and the entire body cope with changes in oxygen levels. Some of these genes include those encoding the vascular endothelial growth factor, or VEGF, that regulates angiogenesis, erythropoietin, and almost all of the enzymes involved in glycolysis, or anaerobic fermentation. The effects of HIF range across almost every aspect of physiology, from metabolism to exercise, to embryogenesis, to immunity, and the changes wrought by altitude. Diseases where HIF response plays a critical role include anemia, cancer, stroke, infection, and heart attack. Applications of these findings are already beginning to make their way to the clinic, with potential drugs to increase HIF used to treat anemia and to suppress HIF used to treat some forms of cancer. These fundamental findings have greatly increased our understanding of how the body adapts to change, and applications of these findings are already beginning to affect the way medicine is practiced. This year's 3 laureates have greatly expanded our knowledge of how physiological response makes life possible.
Thank you very much, Randall. So we'll turn to questions, and to my help here today we have the chair of the Nobel Committee, Professor Patrick Ernfors. We have member of the Nobel Committee, Anna Wedell, and we have Randall, member of the Nobel Assembly, an expert in this field as well. So we'll open up for questions, so please go ahead. Here we have one up there.
Hi, I'm Anna Wedell. Do you want me to speak in Swedish or English?
I think it's appreciated with English, but if you have questions and someone wants specifically to ask in Swedish, that's okay too.
Okay, I'm from Swedish TV4, and I would like to know a little bit about, you said it could treat cancer, for instance. Why is it important that this
EPO.
Yeah, the EPO and those proteins. Why is it important what they do when it comes to cancer?
Okay.
These proteins,
Okay.
good or bad?
Yeah, no, I think if I'll ask Anna Wedell to answer that question.
I should start by saying that the protein you mentioned, EPO, was just sort of the initial protein that was studied as a tool to find this whole system. And there are hundreds of genes that are regulated by the system. And in cancer, there are many links because cancer cells and tumors can exploit this system to optimize the condition so they can grow rapidly, to put it simply.
One could mention that one thing, a tumor in the body, for example, lacks often blood supply. And if it activates this response, it helps the tumor to attract blood vessels to supply more oxygen and nutrition and so forth. But so it's several aspects of cancer cells that...
So oxygen is used differently when you grow rapidly, for instance. Your metabolism will be different. So they will use the system to direct metabolism to be able to grow and also make blood vessels.
Okay. Any more questions? I'm sure there'll be a few. Please go ahead.
This is David Keaton from the Associated Press. We understand you've spoken to some of the laureates. What was their reaction when they heard that they have won this prize? And what's their, who have you spoken to? And were they somewhat expecting this?
I'm happy to say that I was able to reach all 3 of them, which sometimes is a little bit difficult, but that was successful. I should say that the last one I called was William Kaelin, who we didn't have a number to. So this morning I was able to reach first his sister, who I woke up, and she gave me 2 phone numbers. I called the first one and asked if I was speaking to Bill Kaelin. No, the person said, and it was the wrong number, but the other phone number was correct, so I was able to reach Bill Kaelin. He was really happy, almost speechless, and the other 2, the most awake person, I think, was Sir Peter Ratcliffe, who was actually in his office, but also Greg Semenza, I think, was asleep and was extremely happy to hear the news, and happy to actually, they mentioned also they were happy to share the prize with each other in this trio. Some more questions? Sure, go ahead.
Maybe if I...
Yeah.
ask another one then. So for people that are not well versed in the science that will be hearing this, what will be the most easy to grasp benefit of this discovery to them, to the person listening to the news this morning?
Right. I'll think if Patrick Ehrenfors could respond to that.
Well, I mean, it's a system which is required for our body to function normally. So oxygen levels vary in different parts of the body, in tissues and organs. And in particular, for example, during exercise. The muscle during exercise become anaerobic. So this system both is dual. It both makes the cells cope during low oxygen levels, but it's also a system that generates an opportunity for the cell to regain normal oxygen levels. So it's an adaptation of the cell's metabolism to cope with low oxygen, but also a system that increases blood vessel growth into the tissue and also increases red blood cells that now can transport more oxygen and more efficiently transport oxygen. So it's both of these systems. And of course, this is such a basal physiological mechanism that allows us to colonize the Earth in different parts at different altitudes, because oxygen levels vary at different altitudes. So obviously this system is involved there as well. And when you have this kind of basic, fundamental processes in your body, of course, those are also really important in diseases, as we heard Randall mention, such as, for example, anemia or cancer or heart attack or stroke or other disorders where you have a reduction in blood supply and oxygen and nutrient supply.
So really short, one could say that this is one of the critical systems or adaptive systems for animal life overall. So it's an incredibly central, important adaptive system for animals. Something else? Here we have one in the middle.
This is Nordic Chinese Times, and thanks for the announcement and the presentation of this year's Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. As we can see, this year's Nobel Prize is related to fundamental research. It is always useful to apply the findings to the application to our humankind, right? So I'm wondering what is the breakthrough of this finding in treating the cancer? And I'm also wondering the possibility of applying this knowledge to develop any early cancer diagnosis or the potential treatment. Thanks.
So let me ask Randall Johnson to respond to that question.
Okay. Oh, I guess I don't need to turn this on. Well, there are fairly immediate applications that are in development at the moment. It's such as Patrick pointed out and as Anna noted, this is such a fundamental aspect of how our cells deal with getting oxygen and then adapting to its use that one could almost imagine the applications will be, I don't want to say endless, but very, very wide. The very first applications that appear to be coming close to clinical use, in fact, one was just approved in China, is the use of increased HIF expression to treat anemia. And the idea there is that as HIF goes up, not only does that increase the level of erythropoietin production, which of course stimulates red blood cells, but HIF also controls iron metabolism. And so will really coordinate how the body takes up iron and then how it incorporates that into the growing red blood cells. So these are, of course, important applications, both from the standpoint of people with anemia, and oftentimes people with anemia have many, other problems, including kidney disease or even cancer, and so it may be an application that's useful there. The other thing you alluded to was the treatment of cancer itself, and interestingly, as Thomas pointed out, and as my colleagues pointed out, tumors have increased HIF expression, likely to help them cope with low levels of oxygen in their interiors. And so there are drugs in development to actually inhibit HIF, to allow tumors to be shrunk, since tumors use HIF to expand. Now, that may be difficult to conceptualize, that something could be both bad and good. But, of course, that's what a basic discovery is. It shows every aspect of, or it impacts every aspect of the body, and certainly future work in this field will likely have wide-ranging impacts.
Right. Are there any additional questions? I know some are eager to interview, but please go ahead.
Hey, this is Nordic Chinese Times. I am very curious about the biggest argument or concern when you are reviewing the nominees and the projects.
Okay, maybe I could briefly answer that. It actually relates to Alfred Nobel himself and what he wrote in his will, and what really constitutes the basics of our rules, regulation, and statutes. And that is to give the prize for a discovery in physiology or medicine. So each year we are totally focused on awarding the really most important discovery of all the proposals we have on the table each year. So that's really, really central, and that is what is the sole determining factor, I would say, in our discussions and decision process. Anything else? One more here. Maybe you can take the microphone.
Fred from China Xinhua News Agency. Just want to confirm very quickly, the prize amount for this year's prize is also 9 million Swedish crown, right?
I didn't get it.
The prize amount this year is also 9 million Swedish crown, right?
The prize amount, it will be 9 million
and
Swedish
equally
kronor.
divided between the
and that will be equally divided between the
Thank you.
3 recipients, yes. I think if there's nothing else that we can close this session, and some have already booked interviews, and we are also available for additional interviews for anyone who is interested in that. So thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you.
Professor Randall Johnson, member of the Nobel Committee. This year you're awarding the discovery of how cells sense and adapt to oxygen availability. What does this mean?
Well, it's basically a prize that says when you're a cell, if you're an animal cell, you have to always have some level of oxygen. Almost all cells use it to do their metabolic processes. And basically, it is just like a candle burning or any other kind of furnace or engine. You are burning things in order to make heat and in order to make energy, and that's really what we do. And of course, we need oxygen in order to do those things. The problem is, cells inside a three-dimensional structure, like the body, are always getting different amounts of oxygen, and it can depend on different levels of blood flow. It can depend on the fact that the tissue itself might be using a lot of oxygen at any given time. My brain is probably using a fair amount right now, my heart, because it's probably beating a bit fast. And so that's maybe got sort of, it's using more oxygen than if I'm lying down and sleeping. And so because the cell has a very tightly regulated little furnace in it, it has to adjust to these different levels of oxygen in a very fine-tuned way. And if it does this badly, it can even be fatal for the cell. So this is really, the prize is for this sort of almost like a rheostat or a thermostat for the oxygen levels, or a damper that you'd have on your furnace to let in more or less oxygen at any given time. So that it's just right, so the flame burns just right.
And if we take a small step outside the cell, how does this discovery affect people's lives?
Well, it affects people's lives because it really will help us and is already helping people develop new medicines. So basically finding different ways to influence this fundamental process has already shown itself to be potentially very useful in very clear medical applications. So as I mentioned in my presentation, for example, if you want to increase the levels of your red blood cells, this factor comes into play. And that, of course, makes sense, because if you're at high altitude, you want more red blood cells to help you carry oxygen. If you have an accident and you lose a bunch of blood, now there's not enough red blood cells to carry the oxygen. So you want a signal that tells your body, make more red blood cells. And this is a fundamental part of that signal. It's the cellular aspect of it. So a drug that can raise the levels of this can trigger new red blood cell production. And in fact, such a drug, as I mentioned, has already been approved in China and is under consideration in the Western countries as well, including the EU and Sweden.
So in order to describe this prize in an accessible way, what kind of metaphor would you use?
I'd say, I of course would go back to the candle or the furnace and say this is a way for the cell to adjust how much oxygen or adjust its response to the amount of oxygen it gets, because the cell directly can't change how much oxygen it gets oftentimes. But it's an interesting prize in that that's of course at the cellular level, but it also controls much more far-ranging things. So you can think of a cell having to change its metabolism. Okay, that's at a very basic level, but the cell also, when it senses it doesn't have enough oxygen, triggers, for example, the production of new blood vessels. So if I get a cut, those cells now don't get a good supply of oxygen because I cut the blood vessels that are taking blood there. So the cells now release factors that induce new blood vessel formation, also through this factor. Or, again, if I go to high altitude, now I'm not breathing in enough oxygen, and now my body sends a signal saying, make more red blood cells. So it ranges from the cell all the way up to the body, basically.
So if we turn to the laureates, William Kaelin, Sir Peter Ratcliffe, and Greg L. Semenza, what have they done? What have they done in this discovery?
Discovery, well, I know them all. They're all very fine fellows, and they all did very essential parts of this process. Semenza, Greg's initial and very important contribution was first to sort of help define the region of a gene that is basically allowing this to happen, and then it was found that this region was found in lots and lots of other genes. Peter Ratcliffe also participated in that process of defining that. Then Greg actually was the one who cloned and isolated this factor called HIF, and he was the one who named it. And so that has really been the foundation for this discovery in many ways. Peter Ratcliffe came in and made an association between this tumor suppressor gene called von Hippel-Lindau, or VHL, and the regulation of this HIF gene, and that's really an important part of how HIF senses oxygen. And Bill Kalin came in and also made that association, and he and Ratcliffe helped to define the switch, the oxygen-dependent switch, really the knob on the dial, really, that ultimately helps you understand how all of this works. So all three were necessary components, really, or actors in figuring out how this whole thing works. Although they haven't collaborated with each other, they've all been closely associated with the field through the course of all of this.
And how come the prize is awarded now? I mean, some of those findings were in the mid-90s. What has happened to make it sort of such an actual thing?
I can't speak to real specifics because, of course, some of that is confidential in terms of the deliberations of the assembly. But it's very clear that we now understand this fundamental biological switch that really impacts all our lives as living creatures here on Earth breathing oxygen. It's really one of the most important things our cells know how to do. In fact, if an embryo doesn't have this HIF gene, it won't survive past very early embryogenesis. So even in the womb, our bodies need this gene in order to do everything they do. So I guess you could say a direct answer to your question is it seems like a complete and clear story.
And the laureates, I understand the Nobel Committee has been talking to them. So what were their reaction?
Well, of course, that's Thomas, the secretary, is the one who calls them on the phone. But from what I understood, they were all very happy, as one should be, and very excited. And I certainly, we're looking forward to welcoming them to both Stockholm and Sweden in December.
And finally, if you have 30 seconds to explain the main impact of this discovery in an exciting way, what would you say?
I'd say this is what scientists often toss around, this phrase, textbook discovery. I'd say this is really essentially a textbook discovery. This is something that basic biology students will be learning about when they study at age 12 or 13 or younger biology and learn the fundamental ways in which cells work. This is a basic aspect of how a cell works. And I think from that standpoint alone, it's a very exciting thing.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Professor Randall Johnson, member of the Nobel Committee. This year you're awarding a discovery of how cells sense and adapt to oxygen availability. What does this mean?
Well, it's basically a prize that says when you're a cell, if you're an animal cell, you have to always have some level of oxygen. Almost all cells use it to do their metabolic processes. And basically, it is just like a candle burning or any other kind of furnace or engine. You are burning things in order to make heat and in order to make energy, and that's really what we do. And of course, we need oxygen in order to do those things. The problem is, cells inside a three-dimensional structure like the body are always getting different amounts of oxygen, and it can depend on different levels of blood flow. It can depend on the fact that the tissue itself might be using a lot of oxygen at any given time. My brain is probably using a fair amount right now, my heart, because it's probably beating a bit fast. And so that's maybe got it's using more oxygen than if I'm lying down and sleeping. And so because the cell has a very tightly regulated little furnace in it, it has to adjust to these different levels of oxygen in a very fine-tuned way. And if it does this badly, it can even be fatal for the cell. So this is really, the prize is for this sort of almost like a rheostat or a thermostat for the oxygen levels, or a damper that you'd have on your furnace to let in more or less oxygen at any given time. So that it's just right, so the flame burns just right.
And if we take a small step outside the cell, how does this discovery affect people's lives?
Well, it affects people's lives because it really will help us and is already helping people develop new medicines. So basically finding different ways to influence this fundamental process has already shown itself to be potentially very useful in very clear medical applications. So as I mentioned in my presentation, for example, if you want to increase the levels of your red blood cells, this factor comes into play. And that, of course, makes sense because if you're at high altitude, you want more red blood cells to help you carry oxygen. If you have an accident and you lose a bunch of blood, now there's not enough red blood cells to carry the oxygen. So you want a signal that tells your body make more red blood cells. And this is a fundamental part of that signal. It's the cellular aspect of it. So a drug that can raise the levels of this can trigger new red blood cell production. And in fact, such a drug, as I mentioned, has already been approved in China and is under consideration in the Western countries as well, including the EU and Sweden.
So in order to describe this prize in an accessible way, what kind of metaphor would you use?
I'd say I, of course, would go back to the candle or the furnace and say this is a way for the cell to adjust how much oxygen or adjust its response to the amount of oxygen it gets, because the cell directly can't change how much oxygen it gets oftentimes. But it's an interesting prize in that that's of course at the cellular level, but it also controls much more far-ranging things. So you can think of a cell having to change its metabolism. Okay, that's at a very basic level, but the cell also, when it senses it doesn't have enough oxygen, triggers, for example, the production of new blood vessels. So if I get a cut, those cells now don't get a good supply of oxygen because I cut the blood vessels that are taking blood there. So the cells now release factors that induce new blood vessel formation, also through this factor. Or, again, if I go to high altitude, now I'm not breathing in enough oxygen, and now my body sends a signal saying, make more red blood cells. So it ranges from the cell all the way up to the body, basically.
So if we turn to the laureates, William Kaelin, Sir Peter Ratcliffe, and Greg L. Semenza, and what have they done? What
have they done
in this discovery?
Discovery? Well, I know them all. They're all very fine fellows, and they all did very essential parts of this process. Semenza, Greg's initial and very important contribution was first to sort of help define the region of a gene that is basically allowing this to happen, and then it was found that this region was found in lots and lots of other genes. Peter Ratcliffe also participated in that process of defining that. Then Greg actually was the one who cloned and isolated this factor called HIF, and he was the one who named it. And so that has really been the foundation for this discovery in many ways. Peter Ratcliffe came in and made an association between this tumor suppressor gene called von Hippel-Lindau, or VHL, and the regulation of this HIF gene, and that's really an important part of how HIF senses oxygen. And Bill Kaelin came in and also made that association, and he and Ratcliffe helped to define the switch, the oxygen-dependent switch, really the knob on the dial, really, that ultimately helps you understand how all of this works. So all three were necessary components, really, or actors in figuring out how this whole thing works. Although they haven't collaborated with each other, they've all been closely associated with the field through the course of all of this.
And how come the prize is awarded now? I mean, some of those findings were in the mid-90s. What has happened to make it such an actual thing?
I can't speak to real specifics because, of course, some of that is confidential in terms of the deliberations of the assembly. But it's very clear that we now understand this fundamental biological switch that really impacts all our lives as living creatures here on Earth breathing oxygen. It's really one of the most important things our cells know how to do. In fact, if an embryo doesn't have this HIF gene, it won't survive past very early embryogenesis. So even in the womb, our bodies need this gene in order to do everything they do. So I guess you could say a direct answer to your question is it seems like a complete and clear story.
And the laureates, I understand the Nobel Committee has been talking to them. So what were their reaction?
Well, of course, that's Thomas, the secretary, is the one who calls them on the phone. But from what I understood, they were all very happy, as one should be, and very excited. And I certainly, we're looking forward to welcoming them to both Stockholm and Sweden in December.
And finally, if you have 30 seconds to explain the main impact of this discovery in an exciting way, what would you say?
I'd say this is what scientists often toss around this phrase, textbook discovery. I'd say this is really essentially a textbook discovery. This is something that basic biology students will be learning about when they study at age 12 or 13 or younger biology and learn the fundamental ways in which cells work. This is a basic aspect of how a cell works. And I think from that standpoint alone, it's a very exciting thing.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Well, hello. My name is Adam Smith, calling from nobelprize.org in Stockholm. Well, first of all, many, many congratulations on the award of the Nobel Prize.
Thank you.
Were you asleep when the call came?
Most definitely.
Nice way to be woken up.
Yes, well, I think it took 2 calls. The first time I didn't get there quite in time, but managed on the second try.
You must have had a nervous moment, because I guess you may have had an inkling what the call was about, thinking you may have missed it.
Yeah, either that or I thought someone had a very bad sense of humor.
That could happen, I suppose. What did you do upon hearing the news?
I hugged my wife.
So this lovely combination of the three of you in the way your work intertwines, but you discovered the key protein HIF1. Were you amazed by how ubiquitous its involvement in pathophysiology and normal physiology seems to be?
For sure. We started studying a very specific and kind of limited question of how red blood cell production was regulated, and from there it expanded to so many areas of physiology and medicine that it's been quite amazing.
Reading the story of how it all pieced together, it illustrates how much science research is about solving puzzles.
Yes, and unexpected turns. That's what makes science so exciting. You never quite know where your studies are going to lead you.
It must be a little bit like being a detective.
Yeah, it is. You have the added benefit that solving the puzzle may ultimately impact on people's health. And that's, of course, the most important part of the process.
Well, that's an interesting point, because all three of you have one foot in the research lab and one foot in clinical practice. Do you think that's an important point?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really important to have people who are kind of there at the boundary between research and medicine to facilitate the discovery of knowledge that will translate ultimately to improvements in clinical practice.
It must be increasingly hard to keep both things going, with increasing clinical workloads and, I don't know, more form-filling if you're a scientist.
Yes, that's right. In fact, I stopped my clinical work about 20 years ago and focused on the research at that time.
I must say, you do sound quite knocked back by the news.
Yeah, well, certainly nobody expects that. That's for sure. even after people have been telling you for 20 years or more that it's going to happen. No one expects it.
That's right, because the three of you got the Lasker Prize in 2016, which is sometimes an indicator, isn't it?
Yeah, sure, but it's still no guarantee, and there's certainly lots of deserving candidates. So, I was certainly speechless when I received the news.
Well, it's going to be a day of conversations with journalists who are going to be landing on you. Will you find any respite before then? Perhaps not.
No, I don't think so.
We look forward enormously to welcoming you to Stockholm when you come in December to receive the prize.
Yeah, I certainly look forward to it.
Thank you very much indeed. And once again, congratulations.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Dr. Kale speaking.
Good morning. My name is Adam Smith. I'm calling from NobelPrize.org. Well, congratulations on the award of the Nobel Prize.
Thank you.
So it's early there, 5 a.m.
Yes.
Were you sleeping or?
Oh, I was absolutely. I was asleep, and I'm still in a state of shock. So I hope I'll speak coherently.
You sound very coherent at the moment.
I think every scientist in the world dreams of this possibility and knows what today is. But if you're realistic, you don't think it's really going to happen. So I try to treat it like any other night. And so I was asleep.
May I ask you what your first action was on hanging up the phone after hearing?
I'm in a state of shock. It's obviously absolutely wonderful news, but my heart's still racing, and I think it's all just sinking in. And unfortunately, I lost my wife several years ago, so I live alone. And
sorry.
My first thought was that this was something I'd always, if it did happen, wanted to share with her. And I'm just terribly honored, and I'm glad I can share this with so many people, scientifically and otherwise, who've supported me throughout the years.
But that must be a great sadness. I'm sorry.
Yes,
the link that you discovered, the unexpected link between VHL and HIF1, is an example of just never knowing where knowledge will come from and where questions will take you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a big believer of curiosity-driven, hypothesis-driven research. I know that's complementary to other ways of generating knowledge, but I think in the end what drew me to science and what draws a lot of scientists to science is we like solving interesting puzzles, and the clinical features of patients who had mutations in the VHL gene were a curious constellation of findings, but one way to unify them was that there was some abnormality in the way the tumors they were developing were sensing and responding to oxygen, and we thought if we could understand that, we can understand more globally how cells and tissues sense and respond to changes in oxygen. And since I, like my co-awardees, I'm trained as a physician, we understood very well the importance of oxygen in so many human diseases, and it appeared that in these particular cancers that were linked to VHL mutations, that somehow the tumors had co-opted this process for their own benefit, and that has, as you know, has turned out to be correct. So now that we understand the pathway, there are a lot of opportunities for pharmacological intervention in diseases such as cancer, but also other diseases, including heart attack and stroke. But I come back to what you said earlier. I think in the end it was a very interesting puzzle to try to solve.
You raise a very interesting point that all three of you are physician scientists. That does, I guess, give you a different perspective on your work. And do you think it's very important that there are more physician scientists coming along?
Well, first of all, I'm very proud to share the prize with two wonderful physician scientists, but I also like to point out to people that I think scientists in general, and in particular physician scientists, are under tremendous pressure these days to try to justify the importance of their work in terms of potential clinical applicability. And yet I like to point out that our story is really one of trying to generate knowledge and to understand how things work. And if you go deep enough and you understand things well enough, occasionally opportunities for translation or therapeutic application will arise. So I'm so happy to be involved with this story because I think that's how real translation happens. And people like to take shortcuts, or they're sometimes told to try to take shortcuts, but there are no shortcuts as far as I'm concerned. I think you have to understand the system that you're studying, and if you're lucky, once in a while, you'll understand it well enough that the light bulb goes off and you say, "Aha! Now I can finally do this." So I hope when people gain a greater appreciation of our story, that they'll see that yes, we've now in some cases enabled new drugs that are starting to be approved, or certainly in some cases deep into testing. But it really began with some curious clinical phenomenon that we were trying to understand mechanistically. And so, to answer your question, I certainly think we need more physician scientists, but I think they also need to be trained to have the tools to do that sort of mechanistic work, rather than taking shortcuts and doing things that in many cases turn out to be rather descriptive and don't really give you the type of knowledge you need to do meaningful translation.
Thank you. That's a very important point, and beautifully coherently argued at this time in the morning.
Well, I'm trying to listen to myself talk, wondering just how I'm doing here, but thank you.
I think you're doing brilliantly, and no doubt once you've had a chance to have a cup of coffee, and it'll get even better. So, because you're going to have a day, you're going to have a day of it now, aren't you? Congratulations, and we very, very much look forward to welcoming you to Stockholm in December.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello.
Oh, hello. This is Adam Smith from NobelPrize.org.
Hi.
Peter, it's very nice to hear you. Many congratulations.
Very nice to hear you, actually, yes, in your capacity, yes. Thank you.
It's a working morning for you, so what were you doing when the call came?
Well, a very interesting question. I was writing, and will continue to write, an EU synergy grant for a collaborative work with friends and colleagues in Finland, and also my good friend and colleague Christopher Schofield. So, of course, the EU's on our minds at the moment, but we're writing a synergy grant, and despite this good news, I guess I'll continue doing that. Meet the deadline.
Yes, they don't go away for anything. Talking about the EU is kind of absent at the moment. These are fevered times in Britain. Are you? The prize will bring some publicity, and you'll be in lots of interviews over the coming days.
Yes.
Would you take the opportunity to talk about the current situation, Brexit and all that sort of thing?
I probably will, yes. Well, I think there is a responsibility and a platform to make one's views known, and I do have views on this, and I think they're important for science and for society. So let's hope this is a happy event that helps in some way.
Your prize is really an illustration, I think, of never knowing where a question will lead you. Your search for regulators of EPO has opened up a whole new sphere of hypoxia biology. It's so exciting. Yeah,
sure. No, it very much was. You're right. We set about the problem of EPO regulation, which might have seen and did seem to some a niche area. But I believe that it was tractable, i.e. could be solved by someone. And that's a very important thing, that the problem has a potential solution. And, of course, as with almost any discovery science, the impact of that becomes evident later. And we didn't really foresee the broad reach of this system when we started the work. That's true.
But it underlines the importance of having the courage to ask the questions, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the courage, and I think this is an important issue, that we make knowledge. That's what I do as a publicly funded scientist. That knowledge has only one quality that's definable, really. It's good knowledge. It's true. It's correct. The idea at the outset that some knowledge might be more valuable than some other knowledge, well, probably that's true also, but it's extremely difficult to assess in prospect.
And this is an example where we set out on a journey without the clear understanding of the value of that knowledge, and I guess it's gained in value. Quite what the future holds, of course, is yet another question, but it is important that scientists have the courage and are allowed to derive knowledge for its own sake, i.e., independent of the perceived value at the point of creation. And history of science tells us over and over again that the value of that knowledge can increase with the impact on other people's research, other circumstances, all sorts of random and unpredictable issues brought to bear.
Because now, unexpectedly, the hope is that tweaking the system is going to be useful in all sorts of diseases.
That's our hope. Of course, the slightly odd thing is that the leading indication is where we started, the regulation of erythropoietin to correct anemia. Now, so we've gone full circle from private to EPO to a general system to trying to keep it private to EPO, and that's the aim of drugs that are being developed to do that in an effective and safe way. And some of these trials are still to declare, and that'll be exciting news to come in the next year or so.
It's a lovely story. Good. Well, we look forward to continuing to watch it. You sound, as ever, wonderfully calm and collected.
No, I'm not calm. Yeah, but carry on.
Are you looking forward to the storm that's about to unleash on you?
I'm not a tiger for publicity. It's a very happy event, obviously very, very satisfying and a reward for me. I'm happy about it. Yes, I think and comfortable with talking to people such as yourself. I'm not ecstatic about the possibility of being a public figure, if that's what one is. I'll do my duty, I hope.
We very much look forward to welcoming you to Stockholm in December.
Yes, indeed. No, I look forward to that too. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and
Thank
good
you.
to talk.
Thank you. Congratulations again. Bye.
Bye-bye.
men jag vet. I know. Jag förstår precis.
Just to let you know, if you have any questions, there's 2 girls walking around with handheld microphones. Please talk close to the microphone so he can hear you, or she. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's brilliant. Yeah, because I'll be doing it over that corner, so I'll just bring it down. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences and this press conference. The Academy met in session this morning to award this year's Nobel Prize in Physics, and we are now ready to announce it. My name is Göran Hansen. I'm the Secretary General of the Academy, and with me on the podium today are two members of the Nobel Committee for Physics. On my right, Professor Mats Larsson, who is the chairman of the committee, and on my left, Professor Ulf Danielsson. And as usual, I will read the announcement, first in Swedish and then in English. I will also read the citation in German, French, and Russian. Mats will make some remarks about the Nobel Prize, and Ulf will introduce the science behind the prize. And after that, we hope to have one of our new Nobel laureates with us on a phone line, and there will be opportunities for questions. Ready? This year's prize goes for contributions to our understanding of the evolution of the universe and Earth's place in the cosmos. Årets pris belönar bidrag till vår förståelse av universums utveckling och jordens plats i universum. Kungliga Vetenskapsakademin har idag beslutat att utdela 2019 års Nobelpris i fysik med ena hälften till James Peebles för teoretiska upptäckter inom fysikalisk kosmologi. Och med andra hälften gemensamt till Michel Mayor och Didier Queloz för upptäckten av en exoplanet i bana kring en solliknande stjärna. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has today decided to award the 2019 Nobel Prize in Physics with one half to James Peebles for theoretical discoveries in physical cosmology, and the other half jointly to Michel Mayor and Didier Queloz for the discovery of an exoplanet orbiting a solar-type star. Zu einer Hälfte an James Peebles für theoretische Entdeckungen in der physikalischen Kosmologie und zur anderen Hälfte gemeinsam an Michel Mayor und Didier Queloz für die Entdeckung eines Exoplaneten im Umlauf um einen sonnenähnlichen Stern. Pour moitié à James Peebles pour des découvertes théoriques en cosmologie physique, et pour l'autre moitié, conjointement à Michel Mayor et Didier Queloz pour la découverte d'une exoplanète en orbite autour d'une étoile de type solaire. A James Peebles za teoretические открытия физической космологии и a Michel Mayor и Didier Queloz за открытие экзопланеты на орбите вокруг солнцеподобной звезды. And here you have some biographical data about our new Nobel laureates on the screen. James Peebles was born in 1935 in Canada, in the state of Manitoba. And he has had his career largely at Princeton University, where he is today the Albert Einstein Professor of Science. Michel Mayor was born in 1942 in Lausanne, in Switzerland. He is Emeritus Professor of Astronomy at the University of Geneva, Université de Genève in Switzerland. Didier Queloz, finally, was born in 1966 and is also from Switzerland. He's currently Professor of Astrophysics, both at the University of Geneva and at the Cavendish Laboratory of the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. And I would now like to ask Mats Larsson, Chairman of the Nobel Committee, to make some remarks about the Nobel Prize. Mats, please.
This year's Nobel Prize in Physics deals with groundbreaking discoveries about our universe. The last few decades have brought remarkable progress in our understanding of the development of the universe and Earth's place in it. Cosmic background radiation was discovered in 1965 and turned out to be a gold mine for our understanding of how the universe developed from its early childhood to the present day. Were it not for the theoretical discoveries of James Peebles, the wonderful high-precision measurements of this radiation over the last 20 years would have told us almost nothing. His discoveries are rewarded with 1/2 of this year's Nobel Prize. In October 1995, Michel Mayor and Didier Queloz announced the discovery of an exoplanet orbiting a solar-type star. This was a revelation that forever changed our view of the Earth's place in the universe. Since then, more than 4,000 exoplanets have been found. Recently, Earth-like planets with the potential to host life have been discovered. Professor Ulf Danielsson will now describe these exciting discoveries in detail.
Tack så mycket. James Peebles is awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for discoveries in physical cosmology. The whole universe was in a hot, dense state. Then nearly 14 billion years ago, expansion started. We don't know what happened before then, but after a little less than 400,000 years of expansion, the universe had cooled down to a temperature of a few thousand degrees and become transparent to light. We can, using our astronomical instruments, look back to these ancient times and study the cosmic microwave background radiation. At that time, when light lost its grip on matter, galaxies started to form. But it's only 5% of the energy in our universe which is in the form of ordinary matter like stars and planets and living beings. 26% is in the form of the mysterious dark matter. 69% is the dark energy that forces the galaxies to move away from each other ever faster. We are living towards the end of the era of the galaxies. Over the next several billion of years of expansion, our universe will turn into a darker and lonelier place. One can compare our universe to a cup of coffee. Most of it is, of course, coffee. This is the dark energy. Then a fair amount of cream. This is the dark matter. And then just a tiny little bit of sugar. This is the ordinary matter. This is what science has been all about for thousands of years.
Thank you.
Up until now. This is the picture of our universe. Looking back almost 14 billion years in time, this is the cosmic microwave background radiation. Already at the time of its discovery, in the mid-1960s, James Peebles realized the importance of cosmic radiation. Over the next 2 decades, he developed new theoretical tools and used them to uncover the dark components of our universe. Through his work and new ways to observe and measure our universe, cosmology evolved into a science of precision. Science of precision based on the mathematical foundation. Cosmology matured into physical cosmology. Michel Mayor and Didier Queloz focused on what is most important to us, the sugar in the cup. They awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for the discovery of a planet in orbit around another sun. They studied an anonymous star 50 light years away visible to the naked eye under dark and clear skies, in the constellation of Pegasus, the flying horse. They couldn't see the planet directly, so they had to use other methods. When a planet is orbiting a star, the star wobbles back and forth. In the same way as the sound of an approaching train changes its pitch when the train moves towards us and then away, there is a subtle change in the color of the star. As the star moves towards you, the light gets a little bit bluer. When the star moves away, the color is shifted towards the red. The effect is tiny, and you need care and ingenuity if you want to detect it. This is the result. This is the discovery of the first planet in orbit around a solar-type star other than the Sun. The planet had unexpected properties. It was so close to its Sun that its year lasted no more than a few Earth days. Its temperature was 1,000 degrees, and it was as big as Jupiter. Few had expected that such planets could exist. We had thought that other solar systems would be similar to our own. We were wrong. We now know there are many different kinds of planetary systems. In our own galaxy, our own Milky Way, there might be billions of planets. Some of them might be similar to our own Earth. Through the study of these exoplanets, we will learn more about the physics of how planets form and evolve and get a new perspective on our planetary home. This year's Nobel laureates in physics have painted a picture of a universe far stranger and more wonderful than we ever could have imagined. Our view of our place in the universe will never be the same again.
Thank you, Ulf. Thank you very much. Now we hope to have one of our new Nobel laureates with us on the phone line. Let's see if it works. I'll get the magic signal here if we have connection. Yes, Dr. Peebles, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Yes, hello. This is Göran Hansen again. I'm the guy who woke you up, I suppose, an hour ago or so to give you the good news.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, it's all right.
So we're having a press conference right now here at the Royal Academy of Sciences, and we have a large number of journalists here. I'm sure they would like you to ask you some questions. Are you ready for them?
Willingly, yes.
Who would like to start? Thomas von Heine.
Good morning, sir. Congratulations.
Good morning.
This is
Thank you.
Swedish television, public service television.
Mm.
I'm curious because Professor Danielsson just showed us the image of the universe where only less than 5% is actually matter that we can detect. What's your take on the other 95%? What is dark matter and what is dark energy?
Isn't it fascinating that we have a very clear evidence that our universe did expand from a hot, dense state? But yet, although the theory is very thoroughly tested, we still must admit that the dark matter and dark energy are mysterious. It means that although we've made great advances in understanding the nature of evolution of our universe, there are still many open questions. In particular, as you ask, what in the world is this dark matter and this Well, it's Einstein's cosmological constant. You know, it is so ironic that Einstein introduced the notion of what we now call dark matter, earlier called Einstein's cosmological constant, and you know the name of the name change was simply, didn't mean anything. We still don't know what it is. But ironic that Einstein saw a place for this cosmological constant or dark energy in his equations. He put it in, then decided it's ugly, took it out, and now we put it back in.
Indeed. More questions to Dr. Peebles? Please, lady over there.
Hello, my name is Anneli Midner Arn. I'm from Swedish TV4, our private TV channel. 14 billion years, you look back that long upon our universe, and I think I have to ask you the most fundamental question. Do you think there are life on other planets?
This, of course, is only a guess. And it is remarkable, ironic, that we could be very sure that there are many planets, and among them, surely some will be suitable for life of some sort. And surely, I think, on some of those planets, there will be something we may be willing to call life. Whether it would be at all like life on Earth, very difficult for me to know. Perhaps chemists will sort it out. Ironic that we have this vision of life on other planets, and we can be also very sure that we will never, ever see these other lives, these other planets. It shows the limitations, the great advances in science, the great power of science, and the great limitations.
Thank you. Gentleman over there with the camera up on the platform. Here we go.
Thank you very much. David Keaton from the Associated Press. Sir, first of all, congratulations. I would like to know how you felt this morning when you received the phone call from the Academy, and also this part of your prize is for theoretical discoveries. How does it feel sharing this prize for the more practical applications of this, and how do you feel about the sort of like the this interaction between theoretical and practical discoveries?
It is so important that there is that interaction. Theory in any of the natural sciences is empty without observation, in my opinion. You recall that the establishment that our universe is evolving was in part a theoretical discovery, but that was meaningless without the evidence, the very firm evidence now that it really did expand from a hot, dense state. We depend on that interaction of theory and observation. And of course, in finding our way through the nature of our world, the discovery of planets was extraordinarily exciting. The discovery of a planet around a star like the sun is exciting. That will continue. Astronomy is not running out of food, and I can't imagine it ever will. So many stars nearby, so many to examine to see the sort of plants they contain, and of course so charming to me to think, because I've lived a long time in this field, that we had a pretty good theory of how planets form until the first extrasolar planet was discovered. That's a good illustration of the nature of science, isn't it?
Thank you. Yes, lady over there. You'll get a microphone in a second.
Hey, James. Congratulations for getting this year's Nobel Prize in Physics. This is Nordic Chinese Times. And my question is, have you ever thought you could be awarded such a big prize in the world when you conduct your research? And also, if possible, can you share some advice to the young scientists nowadays for us to finding more discoveries in the universe or even in the medicine and everything? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Of course, I had, when I started working in this subject, I can tell you the date, 1964. At the invitation of my mentor, Professor Robert Henry Dickey, I was very uneasy about going into this subject because the experimental observational basis was so modest. But I could think of one or two things to do in cosmology, and each of them suggested something else, and I just kept going. Never a plan of great discovery. When the observations started catching up with the theory, I was, at regular intervals, startled at the great power of advances in technology to test these ideas. So a thing of this sort, I think, very seldom can be at all conceived or planned. These things just happen. I do have advice to young people entering science. You should enter it for the love of the science. The awards and prizes and awards, well, they are charming, very, very much appreciated, but that's not part of your plans. You should enter science because you are fascinated by it. That's what I did.
Very good advice indeed. Yes, question over there.
My congratulations, James Peebles. My name is Joanna Rose. I am from Nobel Media. I wonder, what would you view as your greatest insight in cosmology?
I've read that often winners of major prizes are a little uneasy about the nature of about the statement of the award because they feel that it was slightly off. I have no such feelings. I've lived a very long time. You know, 1964, when I started working, is 55 years ago. Where did all that time go? I might also remark, we should put this in the context of the fact that Einstein in 1917 put the first starting ideas along the direction of how we have gone in cosmology. That's a little over a century. I've been working in this subject for over half that century. Progress has been slow, steady at first, halting at first, increasingly speeded up. Which particular step did I take? I would be very hard pressed to say. It's a life's work.
Thank you.
And well, may I add?
Please.
I was not working alone. The field, of course, was small until the 1980s, when people started to notice the power of what could be done. But always, from the beginning, I had colleagues. Particularly notable, and I think I ought to say it, is in the Soviet Union, there was a remarkable physicist, Jacob Zeldovich, who, after the Second World War, became interested in cosmology and made signal contributions and generated a group of others who made signal contributions. I was a postdoc, a graduate student and a postdoc, and a colleague of Robert Henry Dickey here at Princeton. A similar story, he founded a group. That group is still in operation. We still call it the Gravity Research Group, or at least I do. These people were working along with me, and although I have an iconoclastic turn of mind, and so many ideas were put out. I put out lots of wrong ideas too, you know. The subject grew, and I grew with it.
Thank you very much. I I think we'll move on. So thank you very much again, Dr. Peebles, for being with us today, and we look forward to greeting you here in Stockholm in December when you come to receive your Nobel Prize. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So now there's opportunities for questions to the panel. Everything was crystal clear. I also thought that Danielsson's presentation was exceptionally good.
Okay.
And Mats initiating remarks as well. Any questions to the panel? If not, I know that you're eager to make interviews now with experts, so I think we'll close the press conference, and thank you for your interest, and I hope to see you back tomorrow for the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Thank you very much.
Professor Ove Danielsson, member of the Nobel Committee for Physics. This year's Nobel Prizes twofold. So let's start with the first part about the universe. What did you award?
Sorry?
What was the award about?
The award was about really this discovery of the universe, in a sense, the whole history of the universe and the contents of the universe. And James Peebles is one of the most important cosmologists of our time, and he has contributed to several really essential pieces in this puzzle. So it's about really to realize what our universe consists of. It's not only ordinary matter, the thing that we sort of experience in our daily life, but there are also other unknown dark components. 95% of the energy of the universe is really basically unknown. We just know some of its properties. That is the dark matter and it's the dark energy. And James Peebles have revealed how, by looking back in time towards the Big Bang, looking at the cosmic microwave background radiation which had been traveling to us for almost 14 billion years, how you in that radiation can read off basically the contents of our universe.
That is mostly unknown.
It's mostly unknown. We know the properties, the general properties of this. The dark matter is sort of like matter. It's in clump and it can form gigantic clouds around the galaxies. We know it's there through its gravitational influence on other matter, and also in the early universe when the dark matter had to be there in order for galaxies to form in the first place. But we don't know what that dark matter actually is. And then there is the dark energy, which doesn't really clump. It's spread uniformly through the universe, but it has the property of accelerating the expansion of the universe. So the galaxies are moving ever faster away from each other. But again, we know it's there. We know that it dominates the energy of our universe. But again, we don't know what it actually is.
What metaphor would you use to describe the universe?
Well, one metaphor that I really liked, which I also used in the presentation, is to compare with a cup of coffee. Then, I mean, most what you have in the cup of coffee is, of course, the coffee itself. That's the dark energy. I think that's a very nice parallel. Dark energy, that's the coffee in the cup. But it's not only that. You also need to have some cream or milk. Quite a lot, not as much as the coffee, of course, but still a fair amount of that. That's the dark matter, like a quarter or so. And then just a tiny little bit of sugar. That's the ordinary matter. That's what makes the universe sweet, in a sense. That's us. That's the stars. That's the planets. And then you have to stir a bit, and that's your universe.
Yes. And in this sweet universe, we have planets.
We have planets, indeed.
That takes us to the second prize, part of the prize. What was it about?
That's about the discovery of the first planet in orbit around a solar-type star. So it's really the first planet which you could sort of compare with our own solar system. It's sort of the first example where we're really trying to see how does other solar systems look like. So the star in that system was very similar to our own sun. But the big surprise was that this first other planetary system was so different from our own planetary system. We had thought that all planetary systems would sort of look the same, like our solar system. But in this system, it turned out that there was a big planet, as big as Jupiter, but it was so close to its sun that it took just a few days for it to go one orbit around the sun, while Jupiter takes like 12 years and the Earth obviously 1 year. So it's extremely close, which means that it's also very, very hot. So it's a solar system, a planetary system very different from ours. And since this first discovery, one has discovered many different kinds of planetary systems. So it's a very rich and varied universe out there, full of planets, actually. I mean, there might be billions of planets in our own Milky Way.
And why was it so hard to find if it was so big, the first planet?
Well, the planet is big, but the universe is also big, and stars are quite big. So it's, first of all, a planet that close is very, very difficult to see because it's hidden in the light of the star. On the other hand, it's easy to see because it's close for another reason, and that is that the planet is certainly orbiting around the star, but the star is also moving a little bit. They're moving around the common center of mass, so the star is also wobbling a little bit back and forth. And then if you look at the star and carefully measure its color, there are techniques to do that, you can see that the star is actually moving back and forth along the line of sight. And if you can measure that, then you can calculate the effect of a planet. And you can see that it's a planet which is doing that. So through that wobbling motion, you can detect the motion of a planet around the star. That was the technique used in this particular case.
So you actually don't see any planet?
You don't see the planet, you just see the effect of the planet. Then since then, there are other methods which have been developed, where you instead look at the star, and then if you're lucky, the planet will be orbiting in front of the star, and then you can see a little bit of a dip in the light curve. And this is a method which has been used over since then to discover a large number of planets. So there are basically these two different methods to detect planets, but in neither of them you directly see the planet, just its effect on the light from the star.
Do you think we will ever find life outside there in the space?
Well, I would say that these kind of discoveries now is certainly a step on the way to figure out how it really is, if there is life or not. We now have a chance to actually not just speculate, but go out and observe and try really to establish how it is. Because in the future, and it might be actually quite near future, we will be able to, particular perhaps with planets which are moving in front of the stars, we could be able to measure and detect the atmospheres around such planets, and then to see whether what kind of gases there are, whether there are oxygen or water, vapor, and so on and so forth. And in this way we could take further steps to see whether there actually is life out there. Me personally, I think there is somewhere.
Let's talk a little about the Nobel laureates. Michel Mayor and Didier Queloz are the two who get the prize this year. Did they work together, or did
they work together on this particular discovery? So they are it's a joint discovery with these two scientists. So there is a key paper where they discuss this discovery, and that is these two together.
And finally, my question would be, if you had 30 seconds to say what makes you most excited about this year's Nobel Prize?
I think it's really a common theme in both these prizes, because they really sort of tell us something very essential, existential about our place in the universe. I mean, the first one, the cosmology, the history back to an unknown origin, so fascinating. And the other one, I mean, it tries to answer these questions about, are we alone? Is there life anywhere else in the universe? It's really about our place in the universe, both of them.
Thank you, Ulf Danielsson, for taking your time. Thank you. Professor Ulf Danielsson, member of the Nobel Committee for Physics. This year's Nobel Prize is twofold, so let's start with the first part about the universe. What did you award?
Sorry?
What was the award about?
The award was about really this discovery of the universe, in a sense, the whole history of the universe and the contents of the universe. And James Peebles is one of the most important cosmologists of our time, and he has contributed to several really essential pieces in this puzzle. So it's about really to realize what our universe consists of. It's not only ordinary matter, the thing that we sort of experience in our daily life, but there are also other unknown dark components. 95% of the energy of the universe is really basically unknown. We just know some of its properties. That is the dark matter and it's the dark energy. And James Peebles have revealed how, by looking back in time towards the Big Bang, looking at the cosmic microwave background radiation which had been traveling to us for almost 14 billion years, how you in that radiation can read off basically the contents of our universe.
That is mostly unknown.
It's mostly unknown. We know the properties, the general properties of this. The dark matter is sort of like matter. It's in clump and it can form gigantic clouds around the galaxies. We know it's there through its gravitational influence on other matter, and also in the early universe when the dark matter had to be there in order for galaxies to form in the first place. But we don't know what that dark matter actually is. And then there's the dark energy, which doesn't really clump. It's spread uniformly through the universe, but it has the property of accelerating the expansion of the universe. So the galaxies are moving ever faster away from each other. But again, we know it's there. We know that it dominates the energy of our universe. But again, we don't know what it actually is.
What metaphor would you use to describe the universe?
Well, one metaphor that I really liked, which I also used in the presentation, is to compare with a cup of coffee. Most what you have in the cup of coffee is, of course, the coffee itself. That's the dark energy. I think that's a very nice parallel. Dark energy, that's the coffee in the cup. But it's not only that. You also need to have some cream or milk. Quite a lot, not as much as the coffee, of course, but still a fair amount of that. That's the dark matter, like a quarter or so. And then just a tiny little bit of sugar. That's the ordinary matter. That's what makes the universe sweet, in a sense. That's us, that's the stars, that's the planets. And then you have to stir a bit, and that's your universe.
Yes. And in this sweet universe, we have planets?
We have planets, indeed.
That takes us to the second prize,
yes.
Part of the prize. What was it about?
That's about the discovery of the first planet in orbit around a solar-type star. So it's really the first planet which you could sort of compare with our own solar system. It's sort of the first example where we're really trying to see how does other solar systems look like. So the star in that system was very similar to our own sun. But the big surprise was that this first other planetary system was so different from our own planetary system. We had thought that all planetary systems would sort of look the same, like our solar system. But in this system, it turned out that there was a big planet, as big as Jupiter, but it was so close to its sun that it took just a few days for it to go one orbit around the sun, while Jupiter takes like 12 years and the Earth obviously 1 year. So it's extremely close, which means that it's also very, very hot. So it's a solar system, a planetary system, very different from ours. And since this first discovery, one had discovered many different kinds of planetary systems. So it's a very rich and varied universe out there, full of planets actually. I mean, there might be billions of planets in our own Milky Way.
And why was it so hard to find if it was so big, the first planet?
Well, the planet is big, but the universe is also big, and stars are quite big. So it's, first of all, a planet that close is very, very difficult to see because it's hidden in the light of the star. On the other hand, it's easy to see because it's close for another reason, and that is that the planet is certainly orbiting around the star, but the star is also moving a little bit. They're moving around the common center of mass, so the star is also wobbling a little bit back and forth. And then if you look at the star and carefully measure its color, there are techniques to do that, you can see that the star is actually moving back and forth along the line of sight. And if you can measure that then you can calculate the effect of a planet. And you can see that it's a planet which is doing that. So through that wobbling motion, you can detect the motion of a planet around the star. That was the technique used in this particular case.
So you actually don't see any planet?
You don't see the planet, you just see the effect of the planet. Then since then, there are other methods which have been developed, where you instead look at the star, and then if you're lucky, the planet will be orbiting in front of the star, and then you can see a little bit of a dip in the light curve. And this is a method which has been used over since then to discover a large number of planets. So there are basically these two different methods to detect planets, but in neither of them you directly see the planet, just its effect on the light from the star.
Do you think we will ever find life outside there in the space?
Well, I would say that these kind of discoveries now is certainly a step on the way to figure out how it really is, if there is life or not. We now have a chance to actually not just speculate, but go out and observe and try really to establish how it is. Because in the future, and it might be actually quite near future, we will be able to, particular perhaps with planets which are moving in front of the stars, we could be able to measure and detect the atmospheres around such planets. And then to see whether what kind of gases there are, whether there are oxygen or water, vapor, and so on and so forth. And in this way, we could take further steps to see whether there actually is life out there. Me personally, I think there is somewhere.
Let's talk a little about the Nobel laureates. Michel Mayor and Didier Queloz are the two who get the prize this year. Did they work together, or did
they work together on this particular discovery? So they are it's a joint discovery with these two scientists. So there is a key paper where they discuss this discovery, and that is these two together.
And finally, my question would be, if you had 30 seconds to say what makes you most excited about this year's Nobel Prize?
I think it's really a common theme in both these prizes, because they really sort of tell us something very essential, existential about our place in the universe. I mean, the first one, the cosmology, the history back to an unknown origin, so fascinating. And the other one, I mean, it tries to answer these questions about, are we alone? Is there life anywhere else in the universe? It's really about our place in the universe, both of them.
Thank you, Ulf Danielsson, for taking your time. Thank you.
Hello?
Oh, hello. My name is Adam Smith. I'm calling from nobelprize.org, the website of the Nobel Prize in Stockholm.
Yes.
Where are you now?
I'm in the bus going to the airport.
Oh, I see. Okay.
In Spain. I'm in Spain.
May I just ask you, how did you hear the news of the prize?
Oh, completely by chance, because just leaving my hotel, I connect myself to the computer and I received the news from that about 1 hour ago. A very nice connection, very nice surprise. Sorry, I have some difficulties because I'm in a bus in Spain and the quality of the telephone is very bad.
But anyway, you've made it to the airport at least. It must be a bit frustrating to be away from home when it happens.
Yes, it's a little bit more complicated. And okay, but I will be with colleagues in Madrid and in different places for given some discussion on exoplanets. So it's okay. It's a good moment with colleagues.
Of course, many celebrations to come. And how
yes, I hope so.
Do you recall the excitement of the moment when you saw the first exoplanet 24 years ago?
Yes, I mean, this is not a discovery made at one special moment, because you need to accumulate a lot of measurements during several months, and it's only after that you have some hints that maybe you have something interesting, because due to the lot of false announcements made before, I have decided to wait the next season to repeat the measurement to be absolutely sure. The problem was not the quality of the measurement, but was the interpretation of what we were discovering. So we wait 95, in the middle of 95, the second season, and everything was fine. The same period, the same amplitude, the same phase. So with Didier, we decided, okay, now we are sure this is an extrasolar planet.
Right.
It was a great moment.
It's so unexpected that it orbits in just 4 days. Such strangeness. It must have taken great courage to believe in your data.
Apart to have the confirmation that extrasolar planets exist, this was maybe the most important aspect of this discovery, the discovery of the orbital migration. So that if planets are formed at some distance of the star, then after the interaction between the planet and the accretion disk, create a spiraling or a migration of the young planet towards the star. And this was a major ingredient of the scenario of planetary formation. And today, all scenarios have to include this kind of phenomena.
And that's the point, isn't it? That the discovery of all these exoplanets, over 4,000 now, teaches us a great deal about the way that solar systems form, and indeed even about our own Earth.
Yeah, sure. In fact, this is a different. So we are living in a planetary system. So all the planets of the own solar system belong to the same kind of scenario.
Yeah, because there's often a great focus on the search for life, but we can learn a lot more than just whether there's life out there by looking.
Scientists are interested in the formation of planetary systems and so on, but for the majority of people, what is behind is the question of life. At the present time, this is the most exciting question we have facing us. And for the next generation, I don't know how many years we will need for that, but this is an extremely important question for laymen.
And when do you think we might be ready to see the first signs of life if they're there?
It's the problem of the detection of biosignature. We know how to do it, but it's so difficult, technically so difficult. I believe maybe it's 10 years or more, I don't know exactly, but I don't expect to have an answer next year. Greek philosophers were discussing the plurality of worlds and the possibility to have some of them inhabited. So 2,000 years ago, so I believe we can wait 20 years more.
Well said, yes. We look forward very much indeed to welcoming you to Stockholm in December.
What I have to say, tack.
Exactly. Precis. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations. Bye-bye.
Didier, yes.
Hi, my name's Adam Smith. I'm calling from nobelprize.org, the website of the Nobel Prize in Stockholm.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'm in the car. Is it fine?
That's fine. First of all, many congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I know lots of people have been searching for you. How did you actually hear the news?
Well, it came up as a complete surprise because I got a call from the press office of Cambridge, and I was in the middle of a scientific meeting with colleagues, and then I stopped breathing practically.
And you're breathing now, or only barely?
Well, I'm still shaking a lot, I must say. The good stuff is, since I was in a scientific meeting, we had already a scientific celebration with my colleagues, which I think was exactly what was appropriate and what I needed at that time. It's so big. It's so emotional, like a kind of a wave, and it came up so much as a surprise to me. So it's just unbelievable. I'm still completely stunned by the news, and it's just an unbelievable and fantastic news for this field of research, which is now growing so fast, and about dealing with exoplanets and life in the universe. I'm so glad. I'm so glad the Nobel Prize Committee for this. It's just amazing.
It's 24 years and 2 days since you announced the first exoplanet in Florence at that meeting. Does today's excitement rival the excitement you felt when you saw that first evidence?
Well, I mean, absolutely. There's something amazing in the field. The excitement for the field has never decreased from the beginning, and the emotions to get award to the Nobel Prize for that 25 years after, in a way, is just the acknowledgement of the excitement of what we have been doing, and definitely the emotion that I'm having right now is kind of reward of all this work that we have been doing. I mean, we have to remember that at the beginning, I mean, most of the people were very skeptical about all this discovery. So it is just this is the climax of the story right now, and I'm still trying to understand exactly what's going on, frankly.
Well, it's a lovely validation of the whole field, yes, indeed. And you found that planet as your PhD project. I mean, most people would be happy with just a Nature paper, but now you have a Nobel Prize from your PhD as well.
Yeah, indeed. I've been talking a lot with Michel Mayor, my supervisor in these days, and Michel always said something very nice to me. He said, well, I mean, the quality of the work and the creativity, I mean, it's not related to the age of the people. So I feel pretty easy with that. I mean, I don't really care. And anyway, in my mind, I still feel like a PhD student so when I'm doing research. So it's fine. I'm fine with that.
I love it. There's enough excitement around already, but we now know of more than 4,000 exoplanets, and I think they're being discovered all the time. What are you most excited about currently in the field?
Well, I mean, I agree. We know a lot of them, but we still so much to learn. I mean, there's very little planet that looks like the Earth right now, and we're just barely trying to understand the planetary formation as a whole. And tomorrow there will be people addressing the question of the possible atmosphere content and evolution of the atmosphere, and one day eventually we'll be talking about life. And all this is as much exciting as detecting the first planet. And the detection of the first planet was the trigger of all this, and I guess that's what the Nobel Prize is acknowledging right now.
Indeed. It's such a joy to speak to you. Thank you, and I look forward to speaking more when you come to Stockholm in December.
Yeah, sure, with pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Adam Smith. Many congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
You are, of course, a cosmologist, but I suppose you're also an explorer of the universe. Does it feel as if you're an explorer with your mind?
Oh, yes. We think, we ask ourselves questions. Some of us start computing, others start measuring. It is an exploration, of course, very different from exploring far reaches of the Earth, but we explore in so many ways.
You mentioned that interplay between observation and theory. That is very important, isn't it?
It certainly is. We must always bear that in mind. It's so easy, well, I will make a small sermon. It is so easy for us theorists to build wonderful castles, beautiful ideas. Sometimes it is remarkable. Sometimes these beautiful ideas prove to be close to what the observations tell us. But often also they turn out to be wrong. No great surprise, but time will tell, and it is the measurements that tell us. Of course, we must bear in mind that measurements without theory are equally empty. It's stamp collecting.
It's a great joint enterprise.
That is the whole point.
And of course, you've been instrumental, as the committee said, in changing cosmology from, as in their words, speculation to science. One of the results has been your discovery that we don't know what most of the universe is made of.
Yes.
May I ask, would you hazard a guess as to when, how, or indeed if we'll know what it is made of?
One of the wonderful things about this exploration is that, of course, we don't know what we will see. And it is true here. I hope that we will be surprised by what is found to be the nature of the dark matter. It might be something that has already been considered seriously. If so, the demonstration will be a detection, perhaps in the laboratory. There are remarkably sensitive experiments now hoping to detect the interaction of dark matter with ordinary matter. It might be through its annihilation that releases energy that can be detected as radiation. But my romantic dream, I guess I am romantic about such things. My romantic dream is we'll be surprised yet once again. I'm hoping that will be the case. And so I cannot tell you at all how it will be discovered that we know what the dark matter is. It will appear.
That was beautifully said. Yes, and I like the idea that one doesn't know where one needs to look. It could be in the laboratory, it could be out in space. One just has to keep looking.
That is very appropriate. You don't know where to look. It means that these beautiful experiments to detect dark matter must decide on a direction and then work exceedingly hard over many years to explore in that direction. It takes a tough mind to do that because you consider that they might be looking in the wrong place. I mean that in no way to be a negative statement. I deeply admire the people who are doing these experiments to detect one way or another, to detect the dark matter. But they know, and they are resigned to the fact that they don't know where to look. So they choose a direction, you make that tough decision, and you work hard at it.
Do you ever find it overwhelming, all this mystery?
Oh, no. Overwhelming. No, that has never come to my mind. Wonderful, yes. Fascinating, yes. Eager to know more, absolutely.
I so much look forward to speaking more when you come to Stockholm in December. It's a very exciting news.
It is indeed. We are excited.
Thank you very much indeed. It was a huge pleasure speaking to you, and we look forward to meeting you in December.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Good morning and welcome to the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. Welcome back to all of you who were here yesterday. I see many familiar faces here. The Academy met in session again this morning to award this year's Nobel Prize in Chemistry. And we are now ready to announce the prize. I'm Göran Hansson, I'm the Secretary General of the Academy. With me today are two members of the Nobel Committee for Chemistry. To my right, Professor Sara Snogerup Linse, and to my left, Professor Olof Ramström. I will read the announcement in Swedish, then in English, and I'll read the citation also in German, French, and Russian, as usual. Then we will hear remarks about the Nobel Prize by Sara and an introduction to the science behind the prize by Olof. And later on, we hope to have one of our Nobel laureates with us on the phone line. This year's prize is about a rechargeable world. Årets pris handlar om en laddningsbar värld. Kungliga Vetenskapsakademin har idag beslutat att utdela 2019 års Nobelpris i kemi. Gemensamt till John B. Goodenough, M. Stanley Whittingham och Akira Yoshino för utveckling av litiumjonbatterier. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has today decided to award the 2019 Nobel Prize in Chemistry jointly to John B. Goodenough, M. Stanley Whittingham, and Akira Yoshino for the development of lithium-ion batteries, für die Entwicklung von Lithium-Ionen-Akkumulatoren, pour le développement des batteries lithium-ion, zarazvitie liti-ionych battery. And here are, I thought you liked that prize, it sounded so, good to know. Some brief biographic data about the new Nobel laureates. John B. Goodenough was born in Jena in Germany in 1922. He obtained his PhD at the University of Chicago and is currently affiliated with the University of Texas at Austin in the United States. Being born in 1922, Dr. Goodenough is the oldest Nobel laureate ever awarded the prize. Dr. Ashkin, last year's physics laureate, is actually a couple of months younger. M. Stanley Whittingham was born in 1941 in Nottingham in the United Kingdom. He got his PhD from Oxford University in the UK, and he is today at Binghamton University of the State University of New York system in the United States. Akira Yoshino was born in 1948 in Suita in Japan. He is professor at Mayo University in Nagoya, and he's also affiliated with the Asahi Kasei Corporation in Tokyo in Japan. And now I'd like to ask Sara Snogerup-Linse of the Nobel Committee for Chemistry to make some remarks about the prize.
Okay, thank you, Jan. This year's Nobel Prize in Chemistry rewards the development of lithium-ion batteries. We have gained access to a technical revolution. The laureates developed lightweight batteries of high enough potential to be useful in many applications. Truly portable electronics, mobile phones, pacemakers, but also long-distance electric cars. The batteries no longer weigh 2 tons, but 300 kilograms. The ability to store energy from renewable sources, the sun, the wind, opens up for sustainable energy consumption. To make this possible, the laureates solved a number of chemical challenges. They tamed a reactive element. They built 2 homes between which lithium ions can travel in a controlled manner. Use, recharge, many hundred times to make a durable battery. I now hand over to my colleague Olof Ramström, who will provide you with more details in a highly charged story.
Thank you so much, Sara. That's absolutely correct. This is a highly charged story of tremendous potential. And as you, of course, have understood, this is all about batteries. But before we can actually understand more of the very important discoveries that our 3 laureates have made, we need to maybe remember a little bit about how actually a battery operates. For example, a AA battery you can see here to the right. So as you see to the left here, this is a simplified drawing of a typical battery. So you can see it contains 2 electrodes, an anode and a cathode, and those are separated by some kind of electrolyte. It's typically a liquid that can host or accommodate charges or ions. And sometimes you also have a barrier between these 2 electrodes, so they're physically separated from one another so you don't get short circuits. And what actually happens in a battery is that you have chemical reactions taking place at each of the electrodes. And that generates electrons that can then pass through the circuit, the electric circuit, and power whatever electric device that you want to power. So when you actually look at this simplified drawing here, it may look relatively easy to make a battery, right? However, that is definitely not the case. It's really very, very hard to produce, to design and develop well-working and efficient batteries. And just as examples, some of the batteries we're still using today, like the lead-acid battery and alkaline batteries, they have their origin in the 19th century. So it's really a hard job to make a new good battery. Yet, that's exactly what our 3 laureates have done. They have taken on this challenge, and their discoveries have led to the development of the phenomenal, fantastic lithium-ion battery. So what is this all about then? Well, as you can see, the name, reveals it. This is about lithium. And to the left here, you have a small piece of the periodic table, and you can see that lithium, the red box, has atomic number 3, and it's a very small element, and it's actually the lightest metal we have. And it actually floats, at least temporarily, on water, if you would try that. And that is a very good and attractive kind of property of lithium, because that means that you can pack lots of lithium atoms in a battery, and you still have light weight and a small volume. Another property of lithium that is also very good, as you can see here to the right, is that lithium has an enormous tendency to give away one of its electrons. And so you can see that lithium atoms, they have 3 electrons, and it's very easy for lithium to give away one of the electrons, and then it becomes a positively charged lithium ion, as you can see there to the right. However, these are fantastic properties, but there is a flip side. And the flip side, as you heard a little bit from Sarah here, is that it's a fantastically reactive element. So for example, it reacts quite vigorously with water. So in order to use lithium in a battery, you really need to tame its reactivity. And that's exactly what the work of the laureates really have achieved. So how did they actually do it? Well, let's jump directly to the 1970s. So around in the middle of the 1970s, Dr. Stanley Whittingham discovered a fantastic material that can be used as a cathode together with the lithium. And that material, as you can see to the right here, was titanium disulfide. And as you can see a little bit in this zoom-in circle there to the right, titanium disulfide is actually a layered material. So you have layers, and between the layers you have gaps where lithium ions can sneak in and go out freely. And also very, very advantageous with this type of material, it has a relatively high potential towards lithium. So when you put this together in a battery, you can get a quite high potential of 2 volts. That's already quite good for any battery. Remember, some of the alkaline batteries we use today are 1.5 volts, right? So 2 volts is already quite good for a battery. However, during this time, it also became quite evident that lithium metal is not really quite optimal to have in a battery, right? Because you can have problems. So the idea came up how we should replace lithium with something else. And then you have 2 challenges. One is, with what do you actually want? Can you replace it with? And secondly, whenever you replace lithium metal, the potential will come up, meaning that the overall battery potential will go down from, in this case, then 2 volts to less than 2 volts. So now the challenge will be, how do you maintain the battery voltage or even increase it? And that's exactly what happens next. So in around 1980, Dr. Goodenough, he discovered a really phenomenal, fantastic material that could actually do this. And that material, as you can see here, was based on cobalt oxide. And again, as you can see in this zoom-in circle there, this is also a kind of layered material that have gaps between the layers where lithium ions can go in and out freely. And because this is an oxide material, it contains oxygen atoms, then you get a fantastic high potential towards lithium. So when you put this together with the lithium in a battery configuration, you will get an enormous voltage of 4 volts. And this is a gigantic leap in the battery world from 2 to 4 volts. It's a huge leap. However, as you can see here, we still have the lithium metal as one of the electrodes here. But so how do you replace that? And that's exactly what happened next. So in the 1980s, Dr. Yoshino here, he started working on trying to figure out ways to replace the lithium metal. And he started looking at different types of carbonaceous materials. And he found out that certain qualities of, for example, petroleum coke, as you can see here to the left, when you treat it in the right way, also contains this kind of layered structure where you have gaps where lithium ions can go in and out. And furthermore, this material, these carbonaceous materials, had a fantastically low potential compared to lithium. So when you put this together, this material together with good enough cathode material, you can maintain a fantastically high voltage in this particular battery of 4 volts. And this, what you see here, this is the configuration that we have in the modern days lithium-ion batteries. So the way it works is that you have 2 electrodes. Both of these electrodes are materials which can take up and release lithium ions at different potential. So what happens here is that during discharge, you have lithium ions going from one material across the electrolyte and into the other material. And at the same time, you can see that the electrons are passing through the circuit, driving your electric device. And this makes it very safe, because here you don't have any trace of lithium metal. So it makes it much safer. And also, what is very important here is that you can turn this process around. So if you plug this battery into a power source or a charger, you can reverse the process and you can recharge the battery. And of course, this process you can do many, many, many times, hundreds of times before the battery actually degrades or loses its capacity. So you can see that these discoveries really led to the development of a fantastic product, the lithium-ion battery. And as you can see on the next slide here, we have found applications, this type of battery has found applications in many, many, many instances. And you can see everything from small mobile electronics, if nothing else, not the least the mobile phone you have there in the middle that we're all using all the time, every day. Most of us at least. But also larger objects like vehicles, electric vehicles like bicycles and cars and other things. But as you can see to the right here, it's also increasingly being used as a complement to power sources, energy sources that fluctuate over time, like solar energy and wind energy, for example. So you can see that this battery has had a dramatic impact on our society. And it's very clear that the discoveries of our 3 laureates really made this possible. So it's really been to the very best benefit of humankind. So by that, I just want to leave the word back to Secretary Hansson.
Thank you, Olof. Thank you very much. So let's see if we have our new Nobel laureates, one of them available on the phone. Yes. Hello. Dr. Yoshino?
Yes?
Yes. Hello, Dr. Yoshino. This is Göran Hansen of the Academy again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us at the press conference.
Yes.
Now we have many journalists here, and I'm sure they would like to ask you some questions. Are you ready?
Yes, sure.
Congratulations, Dr. Yoshino. This is Swedish television,
Thank you.
public service television. All this happened, all your work regarding the lithium-ion battery happened decades ago. Would you say that there was a long work period, or was there one moment when you realized, I have it now?
Yeah. I started a basic research on new secondary battery in 1981.
1991.
81.
81.
1981, yes. And I invented the current lithium-ion battery in 1985 by combination of carbonaceous material, negative electrode, and good enough with cathode materials.
So it was a process here that took some time, I gather.
Yeah.
Please, the lady next to Mr. von Eyck.
Yes, it takes a very, very long time.
Hello, my name is Anneli Megner Arn. I'm from Swedish TV4.
Yeah.
Arigato. Sprashi. Totemo I deshita.
Arigato.
Yeah, I'm thinking one of our greatest challenges in our time is climate change. And I wonder what you think about your research and actually what you hope that your research with your batteries will lead to when it comes to our future and climate change.
Yes. I think that the climate change is a very, very serious issue for humankind. And lithium-ion batteries can store the electricity, you know? So for example, electric vehicle is very suitable for a sustainable society.
Right. So it's important help in the attempts to improve the situation with regard to the climate. More questions? Yes, the lady right here on the floor.
Hi, thank you. Congratulations. And I'm a reporter from Nordic Chinese Times, and I want to ask that what did you think about when you did this research? Did you think about it can be applied very largely to our normal life, or did you think that it will improve the environment, or did you think that it will help you or the company make money or something? Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So what were your thoughts when you made the discoveries?
Yes. I think that it is very important matter is curiosity, you know?
Sorry, could you repeat that again? The phone connection is not very good.
Yes. Yeah. I think, are you all right?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Curiosity is very important for the researchers. Okay?
Yes, so curiosity was a major driving force for you.
Yes, that's right. I think so.
Right. So curiosity-driven research that leads to great benefit for humankind. Any more questions? Yes. David Keaton from Associated Press over here. There, on the platform. Yes.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, sir, on winning this prize. You join a number of very prestigious laureates in winning this.
Yeah.
How did you react to earlier today when you received this call and you knew that you were now a Nobel laureate joining this history?
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Surprising.
You sounded happy when we spoke an hour ago.
Yeah.
Yes. Any more questions? If not, thank you very much, Professor Yoshino, and we look forward to when you're coming to Stockholm in December.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
And now, questions to the panel. Yes, gentleman over there.
This is Yiming Fu from China's National Xinhua News Agency. I would like to, it seems to me that this year's prize is a cross-disciplinary research between chemistry and physics. So I'd like you, the panel, maybe expert, give us some comments or elaboration on the significance of cross-disciplinary researches in basic science in the future to potentially benefit the humankind.
Let's hear from both of you. Who would like to start?
Well, I can start. It's absolutely correct. This year's award is very much a multidisciplinary effort. So you can say that we have had input from all sorts of chemistry, not the least electrochemistry, which is of course at the heart of this award, but also other branches of chemistry that had to come in to make this reality. But also, as you say, it's also definitely connected to physics. And if you want to go even one step longer, it's also definitely connected to engineering and development of the actual products. And so I would say that this is definitely a very good example of when all these all these disciplines can come together, and you can find touching points between the disciplines that can lead to such an important, and dramatically high impact product that we've seen here with the lithium-ion battery. So I think that's a really very good comment there.
Sara, would you like that?
I could add that, I foresee that a lot of new discoveries in the future, important discoveries, will be interdisciplinary. So it will require scientists in different fields that are experts within their fields, but to be able to communicate. And chemistry is sort of in the middle. It's between physics and medicine, and everything is molecular or atomic. So chemistry is always going to be part of many new developments.
Maria Gunther?
Yes, Maria Gunther from Dagens Nyheter. Thank you very much for this prize that we have been waiting for some years. I would like to know, will John Goodenough be here in December?
We have not been able to reach him, unfortunately, so we don't know. Any more questions? Have you had your morning coffee yet? Yeah, there's a gentleman who has had his morning coffee.
Yes. Stefan Trump from the German news agency DPA. Thanks again for this conference. I'm wondering also what, in your opinion, what kind of contribution this development of batteries is regarding solving the climate crisis, or if you think that there's a lot of work ahead of us still.
Well, I can start. Definitely we have seen development that this battery can contribute to at least reduce the climate effects that we may see, that we are seeing. And the reason I'm saying that is because we see a switch from fossil fuel transportation to electrically driven transportation, and that is at least on the local level is a direct effect on the environment. But also you move the powered production from the cars, from the vehicles, to power plants where you more easily can, manage the production. And also we can see that we see this, as I mentioned in the last point there, this battery type or similar battery types, they are increasingly being used as complement to these kind of renewable sources, energy sources that fluctuates over time, like solar energy. So you can have the battery being charged when you have access to solar power, and then at night when the sun is down, you can actually use then the power that is supplied from the batteries. So definitely those two things that are really making an impact, and probably will make much more of an impact in the future. Yes.
Yeah, and you're right that this is one of the main pressing issues for humankind to solve for the future, and development of these batteries is a huge step forward so that we can really store solar and wind energy. But of course there's very active development going on to make even better batteries of other materials like iron phosphate, or even easier to produce at large scale.
Thank you. Yes, please, over there.
Åsa Husberg from the Nobel Prize Museum. You weren't able to connect to Goodenough, but Whittingham and Yoshino, could you say something about their reaction we have a lot of people have thought about this prize for some time. So were they like, finally, or was it a surprise, if you're able to say?
None of them used the word finally, but of course they were delighted to hear the news. I don't know if they had been waiting for the news for years, but they were very happy, both of them. We spoke to Dr. Whitting, who was actually been attending a conference here in Europe, and Dr. Yoshino was in Japan. Please.
It's a question somewhat related to the previous one about the benefits. The Alfred Nobel grant specifies that this should be for the greatest benefit of mankind. So the question to the panel is, do you have ongoing discussions about what that actually means? And today we're looking at questions about the benefits for climate change. Has the panel, over the years, reflected on what that actually means, and has that changed as the issues that preoccupy the concerns of mankind have also changed?
I'm sure we can all comment on that. Let me start. The stipulation in Nobel's will that the work should be of greatest benefit for humankind, as we state in our news translation, could mean, of course, benefit in different ways. And the benefit here is obvious, and that's the importance of this chemistry and technology for a more sustainable world has, of course, increased its relevance in recent times and made it a very timely award now, although several of the discoveries were made quite some time ago. If you take a prize like yesterday's physics prize, there is no such immediate application. But we firmly believe that knowledge is of great benefit for humankind. So the benefit can be of different types. There is a benefit in the knowledge, and there is often a benefit in the application now or at later times.
Yes, and as Göran said, the benefits can really be of different kinds. It can be applications that we can all see in front of us and appreciate, but it can also be that the discoveries change the way we think, and that gives us a leap forward. So there can also be prizes that really change the paradigm from what it used to be, and we now have new insights.
Any more questions? If not, then we'll close the press conference. Thank you very much for your interest. Now there will be opportunities for interviews with experts and panel members. Thanks so much.
Olof Landström, you are a member of the Nobel Committee for Chemistry, and the prize this year is for the development of lithium battery. What is special about lithium battery?
This is a fantastic battery. The lithium-ion battery is a fantastic battery because it actually is based on a very, very small element in our periodic table, lithium, which has such enormously attractive properties. And you can actually, that leads to that you can get very lightweight and small volume battery with high power and high efficiency. And that's exactly the benefit of this battery. So you can actually, that's actually enabled the mobile revolution. This battery actually enabled the revolution of the mobile world, I mean, mobile phones and laptop, whatnot, right? So it's really made a very dramatic impact on our society. So I would say that the lithium, the basics is the lithium, and how to tame that into a battery. That's really what is so special with this battery.
Why do you have to tame it?
Because lithium, it's an interesting element. But it's very reactive, right? It reacts, for example, quite vigorously with water. So if you put it in water, you will have, lots of gases formed and so on, right? So you need to be able to really handle that kind of reactivity. But the reactivity is also connected to what we need, right? We need to have the electrons, right, from the lithium, and that is related to the reactivity. So really this award is all about trying to tame that and get it into this small battery package and really use it for what it's very useful to do.
So the three laureates, they have tamed lithium. Did they work together?
No, I don't think they work together. They made very important discoveries, individual discoveries. And together, those discoveries really led to the development of this phenomenal battery.
How long time did it take?
Oh, it took quite a few years because it's really very hard to develop a good battery. It's a difficult process. So it not only does it require, very important discoveries on the scientific level, but also you need to put those scientific discoveries, you have to optimize them and put them together so you can form this battery. So it takes some time to do that because there are many challenges to solve on the way, but they managed.
If you had to think about a metaphor for this invention, what would that be?
Oh, that's a very hard question. I would, that's a hard question. Maybe you can think of this battery is essentially, it's kind of about the rechargeable world in a sense, right? So what this has really led to is that we now have charge, we have power anywhere we go, essentially, right? And really, power is very important to us, to our lives. So maybe some kind of metaphor is that it's all about charging the world and have access to energy wherever we go. Maybe something in that direction.
So in what way did it influence our everyday life?
Yeah, as I tried to mention, so this battery is such a very, very good battery, and also high-powered battery and high energy efficiency battery. So this is actually has found applications almost everywhere. So ever since this was introduced to the market, to the public, we see this battery everywhere. We see it in mobile electronics, of all sorts of mobile electronics, nothing else than mobile phones that we all use, most of us use every day, but also laptops, other small equipment like cameras and whatnot. But we also see an enormous, impact on the transportation sector. So this type of battery has made a large instep in the switch from fossil fuel transportation, like petrol-driven cars, for example, where we now are in the middle of a switch to electrically driven cars. And that's enormous impact on society. And as I also want to mention is that this type of battery has so good performance qualities, so you can actually combine it with energy sources that really fluctuates over time. So you have, for example, solar energy, where you have sunshine during the day, which then can be used to power the battery. And then at night, when the sun is down, you can use the energy from the battery to power the grid. So really we can see an enormous dramatic effect on society because of this fantastic battery.
So what about the future if we are moving towards a fossil free fuel society. Do you view lithium batteries in there or some other kind?
Yes. I think we are actually only in the beginning of that development when it comes to the real environmental effects here, and for example, transportation and the powering of the grid. So I think we will see much more of that in the future, not only maybe from the lithium-ion battery, because that's of course developed continuously in even better and better versions of it, but also other types of batteries that may be discovered in the future. And I think that's really the future, to have this effect where we actually use batteries more and more for our powering.
One of the laureates, John Goodenough, is the oldest ever Nobel Prize laureate, 97 years old. Can you tell us a little about him and his work?
He is a fantastic scientist, and you can say that he has been working in this field for many, many years, and he never retired. So he's still working in this field up until this age. He's still going to the lab pretty much every day, as far as I know, and he still makes contributions to the community when it comes to the battery, science and the battery development. So he is a really remarkable person. He is really burning for this field and really made very large contributions.
And finally, if you had just 30 seconds to describe the prize, can you tell us what makes you most excited about it?
That's an easy question. So what makes me most excited is that this is a prize, this is an award, which that many disciplines have to come together to make this work properly, to make the final product work properly. So here we have an award where you have a combination of course, chemistry, which is at the heart of these discoveries, and definitely basic science discoveries. And combine that with physics and technology and engineering, that has then led to a fantastically useful product that we all can use every day. I think that's the most exciting about this award.
Thank you, Olof.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking your time.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, hello. Am I speaking to Professor Yoshino?
Yes, this is Yoshino speaking.
Congratulations on the award of the Nobel Prize.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Amazing. Very, very, very happy.
Thank you. You developed the lithium-ion battery that first went on sale in 1991 and now powers our world. Why did you decide to work on batteries?
Initial stage of my research is not for secondary batteries. The first step is new material, electroconductive polymer.
What are the great challenges ahead for battery production?
Yes, increasing of energy density. Yeah, it is very important technical issues, and also the reliability is very important to improve.
What is the secret of your creativity?
It's very, very difficult question to answer. I think it is very important to thinking every day.
To keep thinking every day, never take a holiday from thinking.
Yeah, that's right.
Professor Yoshino, we very much look forward to welcoming you to Stockholm in December.
On December, yeah. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.